A return to one of the very first planets in Star Trek is on the cards this week, but how was episode 4 of season 2 for Strange New Worlds among the Lotus Eaters? From weird exotic radiation causing everyone to forget who they are, cultural contamination on a massive scale, to lessons on how important it is to not only remember the good memories but the bad ones as well. The latest episode of Strange New Worlds is an interesting one going back to where it all started. Let's take a look. Spoiler warning, this is our full video review of Strange New Worlds' 4th episode of Season 2. As such, you have been warned like usual if you're still here at this point and aren't turning away. Why? If you've not watched this episode, turn away now. No, seriously, we are going to spoil it for you, because we're evil. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack, and let's get straight into it. Before we do, like always, if you are new here, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then of course, we want to hear about it. Okay? Engage.
Abso-frickin-lutely.
The main underlying plot of this episode is essentially the romance between Captain Pike and Captain Batel. They're struggling because of not only their roles as captains of Constitution-class starships, and yes, the debate whether the USS Cayuga is a Constitution or a Sombra class is still active, even though I definitely think it is a Constitution. Basically, neither really have time to spend with one another due to having to shrink off those under their command to basically have a meal together. It's complicated, okay? This is not the only issue between the two, as Batel seems to have been punished by Pelsac, the Vulcan Badmore from the trial episode, and been passed up for promotion, which Pike claims should have been hers. It also confirms that Commodore is above Captain, so Pike being given a title or rank of Fleet Captain in the future will be interesting. Pike does get given a gift by Batel, an Opelian Mariner's Keystone, basically a necklace which is said to guide sailors home. By the way, for those of you who recognise the Stargate necklace I'm wearing, you're now my best friends. Anyway, this actually has narrative significance and actually helps Pike and his away team home when they forget who they are. It's a bit cliche, but you know. We also do learn that Pike does like to push people away that get too close to him, even if he does really like them. He gets some strong words from Una about this, which I have to say, I love their platonic relationship as captain and first officer, but more as friends. Una's willing to tell Pike to his face what he is doing wrong, whether in her first officer capacity or her friend capacity. I would really like to explore their past together at some point, and more of how they met and grew this friendship. We sort of touched on it in episode 2, but didn't really do much. As this episode ties into the original pilot of Star Trek, The Cage, it adds some new things both in-universe and out-of-universe, which are basically retcons, which do work extremely well and there's nothing to be feared from this. An interesting new piece of information is that Spock was injured on their last mission to Rigel 7. This may explain why in The Cage, the Spock is seen with a limp while on the planet of Talos 4, which is only recently after a mission to Rigel 7. Another retcon in this episode related to Rigel 7 is that Zacharias Nigen, an officer in Pike's landing party who is believed to have died on the mission, actually survived. This works as it is also knowledge to Pike, who had believed that he had died and didn't go back to rescue him. Zacharias is an interesting character, or just we're going to call him Zach because it's easy to pronounce that, but very much needed some more material to fully explain to the audience why he did what he did. He was seemingly picked up by some Kayla warriors and made their leader, with his Starfleet Delta being made his sigil. With the equipment left to him, he was able to equip his warriors and he took over control of the planet and essentially led it as the king. Oh, to be king for a day. That's an SG-1 reference. It would have been really interesting to learn if he had done this during his forgetting and was not wholly cognizant of his actions. I feel that would have been more interesting, a man who became a tyrant under his forgetfulness, and then when he realised what he had done, knew that if he had returned to Starfleet, he would have been trialled for Prime Directive violations, so just did what he had to do to remain free and ultimately survive. That could have been what was the case, but there wasn't enough in the episode to claim whether this was true or not or what were his actual intentions. Another new addition to Rigel 7 is this exotic radiation that causes you to forget, something that definitely wasn't mentioned previously from The Cage. This is simply explaining that they were not on the planet long enough to start feeling the effects of the radiation. There is also convenient time sort of mentions to actually back this up. They only mentioned around 4 hours on the planet last time, but when Lana actually feels the effects of this, it's been 6 hours. For example, as I just said, they mentioned the last away team was on it for only 4 hours, and the ship wasn't in orbit long enough to actually have too much exposure to this exotic radiation, which is a convenient Star Trek way of explaining what's going on, don't you think? Very much reminds me of the Next Generation's way of conveniently explaining the plot threads relating to a planet. The ores which the planet's castles are made up with protect the inhabitants from the radiation, as well as the ore which the Kayla warriors wear, which is a nice little piece of information to explain how the society runs. A ruling class protects itself in its castles with its own protective force, and the use of labour who forget, and are kept docile by the totems within their huts for information of what it provides. It would be interesting to know where the castle from the cage was, and if it was from south of where Zacharias' castle was, or Zach's castle. It would have been a nice little lore piece to have a single bit of dialogue saying, this delta symbol is further north than our previous away team. This episode is heavily centred around forgetting yourself and who you are. What is very fascinating is that a lot of ingrained things still remain, and tell us a lot about who our crew are deep down. Pike really does love Batel, with that core memory being what helps him get back. Mbenga knows he's a doctor and is able to treat wounds because he has done it 1,000 times. Ortegas can pilot a massive starship because piloting is an intricate part of who she is, and that is essentially muscle memory at this point. What is scary for both us and for Pike as a character is that how his base character is capable of such pretty bad things. He very much injures Zach while not remembering who he is, punching numerous times, and goes to show how much of his training keeps that under wraps, and how his morals and principles keep him away from his base instinct. It very much reminds me of Quark in Deep Space Nine, basically saying that humans are capable of becoming as nasty and as bloodthirsty as the most violent Klingons, without their comfort and their morals keeping them in check. Now, an interesting point. When people on the ship are struggling to remember who they are, Spock provides them with pads and personnel files of the crew members. However, Spock can't read the file when he forgets who he is. This almost suggests that Spock has forgotten how to read English, with Vulcan probably being his first language. The universal translator was still active, so he might have been speaking Vulcan at the whole time, but you thought it maybe would have conveniently translated the pad? This episode was said to be more of Ortegas when the first outfit scene was given last year during Star Trek Day, and yes, she was featured heavily, but I would not say this was an Ortegas episode. This was half an Ortegas episode, half a Pike episode. Ortegas did get to do personnel logs in this episode, and a lot of screen time. However, which was good to see, we still didn't get a lot of her character. Being very caring towards Uhura and taking her to sickbay was good, but it didn't expand her much from what we already know. It's already been established that her and Uhura are personal friends, so yeah. As said, we get to see how good of a pilot Ortegas is, with piloting a starship being second nature to her, and therefore not prone to being forgotten. We do get a look at her quarters, which doesn't have anything too interesting or revealing on first watch, but who knows what we might be able to see when carefully analysed. We also learn that she's from Barquelia, Columbia's fourth most populous city. Oh, and I spotted something in the quarters by the way. When we see the Enterprise model, I'm pretty sure there's a Walker class model there as well. I gotta rewatch it again as I only noticed on first glance, but it'd be pretty cool if it is, and maybe related to what ship she served on in the Klingon Federation War. I've gotta go back and see this now. Among the Lotus Eaters is written by Kirsten Beer and David Perez, but directed by Eduardo Sanchez. Overall, this was an interesting episode which said some things, but very much felt like a novel adapted into an episode. This was probably down to Kirsten Beyer's writing style, being a Trek author first who has written numerous Star Trek books and has branched out into episodes with Strange New Worlds and of course Star Trek Picard. This is both a good thing and a bad thing, as some minor characters like Luke felt very fleshed out and emotionally full as a person, feeling like they exist in a world forgetful society, whereas some characters like Zach really need a little more time to be fully whole as a character in what we were shown. This would be where a book could shine, giving us a small chapter on a flashback with Zach, some internal thoughts, or even some rambling guard dialogue. Honestly, I think even an internal scene of him just chilling in the castle, maybe talking to a second in command, could have really helped sell his sort of whole storyline. Another option would be giving Zach a bad influence, basically what I said there. A minister or chief of staff Kayla that had obviously manipulated him and why he forgot who he was, and kept a leash on Zach to keep their ruler in line. We all need one of them occasionally. The directing itself was very good, with the forgetting scenes being a highlight and putting us on the viewer in the same shoes as the characters. Whenever we rejoined with a character, it would be moments after a forgetful episode coming at a very blurry screen. Not only would the character wonder where they were and what happened, but we would too as a viewer. The fight scenes were quite hit and miss with me, with Pike using a plate as a shield in the throne room as a highlight, to Lan getting stabbed in the quarry at a low point. One felt more kinetic and the other was more linear and flat. In terms of retcons, what this episode added to the lore with Rigel 7 was very much enhanced what was being removed. Having a weird forgetful society, which is now established which still works with the cage, is very good. Even though a society which forgets who they are, or at least the field Kalar do. It does seem like it wouldn't work with society, but this episode takes its time to establish small things which make it ultimately work. People mark on their bodies things they want to remember. The outfits and the dyes they wear denote what they work on, whether it be lumber or quarry work. They have inscribed wooden totems telling them their society and history, and there are palace Kalar for one helmets to basically tell them what to do. It is a society that somewhat works, but you can see why they probably have been in the Bronze Age for 1,000 years. At the end of the day, this episode is about how important it is to remember, not only the good, but also the bad. The pain will still remain as it is part of us, but only by remembering what caused that pain can we move forward as a people. I very much like Luke's sort of reaction towards the end there, when he remembered his son and ultimate family. Overall, this was an engaging episode that ties into the very first unaired episode of Star Trek, and enhances what it is, and basically recontextualizes quite a lot. Pike mourns Zach, and was even so heartbroken over the death of some crew members that he thought about retiring from Starfleet. Zach surviving doesn't take away from that, but it makes us fall from grace and then the feeling of being forgotten himself and what was left behind all the more painful. Zach was afraid he was forgotten, and this was physicalized by the planet where you forget everything. Kinda sad.
Your logic feels sound to me.
Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2 has a new episode releasing every Thursday on Paramount+. So you can watch that basically wherever Paramount+ is, and if you want to check out where to watch all of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, head over to articles on trekcentral.net where we've got a full breakdown of where you can watch things. So, what do you think of the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2? Did you enjoy what was added to Rigel 7? Let us know in the comments below, because if you're talking Trek, we would love to hear about it. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you throughout the weekend with brand new Star Trek content. If not, next week for more Strange New Worlds. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.